We do have these sort of set 5 questions, but as we've sort of spoken about, they're just a framework.
No, they're good questions.
Yeah.
We'll go with that because for your audience, they're relevant questions.
Yeah. Well, let's hope.
That's going to be their question.
Yeah. Well, Shaunaka Rishi Dash, thanks very much for having me into the Oxford Centre for Hindu Studies. We've just been talking about sort of the formation of the centre here, and you were saying that when you set it up in the late 1990s, it was the first centre for Hindu studies. So it's a pretty remarkable centre. The walls are stacked with books, and it does have a level of what would you call it? Authenticity to it. So yeah, thanks for having me in.
Great pleasure. Thanks for coming.
As we've spoken about, this is a new approach to interviewing that I'm doing, and we're looking at multiple religions and asking the same 5 questions to everyone. And your expertise is Hinduism. So I thought we'd just dive right in, starting at the top. And don't feel the pressure to speak on behalf of the whole Hindu faith.
Can't.
Yeah, which is an impossible task. But starting from the top.
Well, just to qualify, it might be, and you can stop me halfway through this interview to qualify it in some other way, but it might be useful for me to speak from my faith perspective rather than try to represent the whole of Hinduism like you've suggested can't be done.
Yeah.
So I practice Gaudiya Vaishnavism, which is a specific form of a specific denomination. But when you talk to a Hindu from their specific perspective, you just get a lot more.
Yes. And you're in fact ordained priest as part of that.
Yes, yeah.
So you do come with a level of authority there.
One likes to think so.
Yeah. But I think as a general comment, it is very difficult to talk with a level of persuasiveness, I suppose, for things that you in the area of religion and sort of the topics that we're going to cover without sort of engaging with them to a certain extent yourself.
Yeah. No, and I think in Hinduism, it's really essential to be talking to the person rather than the institution.
Yeah.
Because you don't get anything otherwise. You ask a Hindu a general question, what's your Bible? And they have no concept of Bible. You're looking at a wall of books here and they're all Shastra or scripture. So how do you answer the question? And they invariably say a small book like the Bhagavad Gita, which is actually a chapter of a much bigger book. It's not even a book.
Yeah.
So that already you're in trouble. But the bigger issue is they're answering the question. They're not questioning the question. They're trying to please you. And then you've asked them a general question and they give you a general answer. It might not even be their book. They're just thinking, well, most Hindus would read that book.
Yeah.
So the communication goes all over the place. So I do think if you speak to someone's heart, then that's where you begin to access Hinduism. There's a lot of head in Hinduism, a lot of philosophy, a lot of ritual. There's a lot going on. A lot of smoke screens, shall we say.
Yeah.
But if you speak to someone's heart, what do you think? What's your perspective? What's your understanding? What's your experience? And maybe that word experience is actually the critical word. That's when you begin to get into Hinduism a little bit.
Yeah, and I guess not going away on too many tangents before we even start, but I think one of the beautiful things about Hinduism is it just presents this whole array of paths that different people, according to who they are and how they want to live, can choose to walk down.
Yeah.
And it doesn't discriminate. It doesn't say that one path is better or than another. It leaves open the way to the experiencer.
Yes. I mean, it's very romantic to think that Hindus don't say that one is better than the other, but
yeah, sure.
but there is a tolerance.
Yeah.
Even though it's not better, off you go.
Yeah. Best of luck.
Yeah.
Anyway, so I think we start with the big question: who or what is God?
Very good question. There are 6 principal Hindu philosophical schools. And that's not to say that there aren't a lot more. But there are 6 principal Hindu philosophical schools. 3 of them are non-theistic. They're not atheistic. They're non-theistic. They just don't engage with the idea of God. So the idea of the supreme, the one behind the many, etc., is very much there. And it's because of the philosophical underpinning of Hindu theologies that people feel they have a lot of choice, because it is philosophical. It is down to you to choose. The word for philosophy in Sanskrit is darshan, which means how to see, or what you're seeing, your vision. So philokalia is the love of knowledge. That could be very armchair, but what you're seeing is what you're experiencing. But how you're seeing, of course, is extremely individual. It's based on the eyes you have and the fact if you're colorblind or not. I'm a bit colorblind, so what I'm seeing is different. Your education, your upbringing, your parents, so many things. In Hinduism, your past lives and the impressions that they've left. So how you're seeing is very important, which means that you are choosing your path immediately. It's very individual. So there are as many religions, philosophies, worldviews as there are people. That's a given. We all come together in our stamp clubs of Hinduism, Judaism, Christianity, etc. But even you go into a church and every individual has their individual relationship with Jesus and the priest. And it could be a terrible relationship for some people. But it's very individual. So that's that basic understanding. With that, then everyone is finding their own path. And the idea of the Ishtadev, who is or what is the idea of God that is more important to you? The Ishtadev is the supreme idea of Dev, of the Godhead. So you'd ask someone, who is your Ishtadev in Hinduism? You couldn't, and they'll give you an answer. It'll be Ram or Krishna or Shiva or Parvati, and so there are males and females in that. It can be Ganesh, who's half elephant, half man. It starts to boggle the mind, but these ideas of God, these forms of God, multifarious, is that polytheism? And it's not actually, it's monotheism. It's looking at God manifest in many ways. And these ways are very wonderfully colourful, and there are forms to them. They're animal, half human, half animal, fish incarnations. It's just, and then there's male and female, and sometimes male and female are in the one body, one half is male. So the deity is not taking a lot of our considerations very seriously. It's not taking the idea of humanity very seriously. Humanity is only one form of life. And the avatar is coming down and engaging with all forms of life, which environmentally is a game changer, but also it puts humans in their place in the cosmic context. And gender, the Lord doesn't seem to care. It's not a big issue for him or her.
Yeah.
So that's, I've just laid out the context. Now, me personally, I came from a Catholic background. I was searching for the truth in my life. I never, in a sense, left Catholicism. I just developed and ended up in Hinduism. So I'm kind of an Irish Catholic Hindu. The form of Hinduism I practice is called Gaudiya Vaishnavism. Vaishnavism is the worship of Vishnu. But my Ishtadev is Krishna, the Lord of my heart, shall I say. I'm most attracted to the form of God, Krishna. And Krishna is a child, and everyone falls in love with Krishna. The word means all attractive. So everyone just falls in love with Krishna. As soon as they see him, they come up. He's famous for being naughty. He steals butter. And the women who churn the butter see that he's stolen. They come up to chastise him. As they're chastising, they fall in love with him again. So they can't achieve it. So it's just he's all about love. And it's difficult not to love a child or a puppy or a kitten. So this is an extraordinary form of God. But another aspect is Krishna is about love and enjoyment. And you could say being irresponsible in some way. It's a very strange form of God. All the other avatars have a specific purpose and duty to perform when they come, when they interact with humanity, when you pray to them. Ram is a king, and he's very dutiful. He's very, you would call religious. In India they would say dharmic. He's always looking what is the right thing to do and how to do it in the right way. And he's just perfect in it all. It's kind of, and maybe annoyingly perfect, but we aspire to it. Everyone loves Ram. But Krishna is very different. He doesn't seem to have a duty. I mean, a child doesn't. And we aspire for a dutiless existence, one without responsibility. Religion is all about responsibility, taking on a big, heavy cloak of responsibility. And with Krishna, you take it off. It's not about religion. It's about the heart. It's about who you are in your capacity to love, to be able to give affection, to be able to be kind, if you bring it down to the lowest common denominator. So it's not simply about religion, because religion can get in the way of that as well. Religion is a very good scaffolding, but it's not necessarily the building that it's holding up. So Krishna appealed to me wonderfully, because Krishna doesn't have any responsibility, and that seems irresponsible. God should be the most responsible, but he doesn't. It's like we want retirement, where we can just play drafts or play golf or whatever we can still do with our aged body at that stage. But what if you're retired when you're 5 years old, and that was it. That was your life. So this idea of God, that's really not the God that we're thinking about. It's not a religious God. It's not a God who feels a need to be religious. It's God who's liberated from our idea of God. That was extremely attractive. But really the most important part of that is, without love, that doesn't make any sense. Without the relationship, the capacity to have a relationship. So darshan, the Sanskrit word for seeing, in that context, is not just philosophical, because darshan in that context means the being able to see God and God to see you. So it's the seeing is relational. So your darshan of the Supreme means that you're opening up the possibility for the Supreme to see you. So,
and in that sense, there's sort of a receptiveness that is required. If you're seeing sort of the wrong type of God, or the God in the wrong nature, it becomes hard for you to then receive that type of God back. Which I suppose for you in sort of your Catholic context, you were, I guess, seeing an Abrahamic God, which a lot of people do see, quite like Ram. But
yes,
then you come across sort of the child of Krishna, and then it's a more receptive aspect.
Well, it is interesting that it's very true. It's interesting that Hindus will, looking for a place to meditate or to chant or pray or something, they'll very easily wander into a church or a synagogue or a mosque and consider that a spiritual place where their God is residing in a different form with a different name. You won't get it the other way around. So if I'm looking at the Jewish, the Christian ideas of God, and I totally resonate with them, recognize them, that's the God that I was brought up with, exactly as you say, and that I knew and loved. But I kind of had to love that God. Otherwise, he'd smite me. So a little bit gun to the
get you for stealing the butter.
yeah, exactly. Gun to the head. Do you love me? Yes, sir.
Do I have a choice?
Yeah. Otherwise, you're going to hell eternally, or your ears will fall off, or whatever. But you get that in every single religion. It's there in Hinduism as well. So that idea of God is there, and it's not a problem. If that's how you can relate to God, then relate to God in any way you can. And if you need God to be big guy, then with a stick, then if that's what gets you going in your religious life, then use it, because it won't do you any harm. But it doesn't mean that you can't develop from there. That's kind of basic to Hinduism. That if that's what gets you started, fantastic. For instance, the Kama Sutra. So we think of the Kama Sutra and sexual positions and all that kind of stuff, and actually there's not many sexual positions in the Kama Sutra, and it's not what it's all about. But it is about someone who is very attached to sex, but trying to be spiritual. So it's giving them access to ways that they can begin to regulate themselves and think about something higher than sex. Use sex as a way of going beyond themselves, and then obviously beyond the need for sex. So there are all kinds of entry points in Hindu culture. A lot of people would look at the Kama Sutra and go, ooh, really not my thing. But for some people, that's exactly where they need to be. But the people that go, ooh, aren't going to diss it, because it is helpful for people.
Yeah.
And it's necessary. It's necessary for people. And it has very interesting things in it. So it's exactly as you say. Hinduism, it opens up all kinds of possibilities, that God has all kinds of possibilities, and every possibility has its place and has its need for us. We need God. We need the rules and regulations of religion. And then at a certain point we need to go beyond them. But that doesn't mean that then we look back and we reject them. No, they're a necessary part of the path. As you're going up a ladder, you don't cut the ladder from underneath you, because you're cutting yourself. You're going to fall. So we need steps along the ladder. If you can't do this, then do this. If you can't do this, do this. If you can't do this, do this. And that's exactly how Krishna teaches in the Bhagavad Gita that we've mentioned.